What is up, everybody? I'm back here in my tank top for like the seventh video in a row. I'm basically in my pajamas right now. But I thought I'd come back on here, make a review for the Continental. So, about a year ago, I watched the first episode of the Continental and I made a little small review on it. And I wanted to make a review for each episode that came out on Peacock. Unfortunately, time caught up with me and I just never got around to it. Well, this summer break has allowed a little bit more free time, and hopefully, the fall semester will allow a little bit more of free time to catch up on some shows that I've been missing out on and finish up this album that I'm doing. But I finished the Continental. I guess I had lack of motivation for it, but it's 3 episodes long, hour and a half each. So it's not like your typical knockout one episode in 30 minutes or 55 minutes or something. Like, it felt a little bit different, right? I guess, I don't know. I didn't have a lot of motivation to watch it, but I finally came around to finishing it off. And, like I said in my review, I'd finish it. So here I am explaining the rest of it. Basically, it takes place in the 60s and 70s, I believe. Yeah, the 70s, more accurately, is the 70s. In the John Wick universe, during, I guess, the High Table is controlling everything still, as they would be in the John Wick universe. It's about the Continental Hotel, as you can imagine. The main character is Winston. I believe Winston Scott is his last name. Scott. The character Winston from John Wick. It's a younger version of him. I think I said in my last review that the actor that plays him is spot on with at least trying to emulate, Ian McShane. We see a young Sharon who was played by the late Lance Reddick. Is played by a younger actor in this show. Mel Gibson is fucking great in this show. Mel Gibson's crazy. They just let Mel Gibson be Mel Gibson, which is fucking awesome. And he plays the villain who runs the hotel, basically, right? And I guess there is spoilers in this video, so just be aware of that if you wanted to watch the show. Because I do kind of recommend it if you want something entertaining for 4.5 hours maybe. But it's also kind of redundant. It's one of those things where it's just like, it's okay, it's fine, but it doesn't really move the ball. It doesn't make you like John Wick shouldn't be a franchise, but I'll get to that in a little bit, right? Mel Gibson plays a father figure to Winston Scott and his brother Frankie. So Frankie gets out of the Vietnam War, bringing back a woman with him because he got yellow fever, if you know what I'm saying. So brings her back from Vietnam, and he steals a coin press from the Continental, right? And so the story is about getting the coin press back, as well as getting revenge on Mel Gibson and the Continental. From the perspective of Winston Scott, because Frankie gets assassinated by the High Table, and so then the 2 episodes after, like the second episode, really dives into more setting up the finale. Recruiting characters to do this big heist on the Continental, which was cool. Then the third episode is basically the heist on the Continental. I don't know which more to explain about the story other than there's a lot of character building, there's a lot of hidden elements, and there's I'll just explain what I liked about it and what I didn't like about it, because it's kind of a mixed bag. Not to say that it was like so mixed that I wouldn't recommend it. I do think that John Wick fans might enjoy it, but I also don't think that it's appealable to everybody. I think it's very nuanced, and it proves that John Wick should not become a franchise. John Wick should have never been a franchise. John Wick should have been 1 or 2, 3 movies. At most. I'm glad they stopped at 4 for now. Let's not jinx it, right? Let's not jinx it. So basically, what I liked, the action sequences, always on point. Love those action sequences. Especially the ones in the Continental, where it was just like a nonstop action movie for like a good 30, 40 minutes of the runtime. And so characters are very colorful. They're very interesting. A lot of background. Now, they do suffer from a very two-dimensional, writing stance. Basically, they're not very, I guess, because I don't want to say that they're not well written, but they're just not as fleshed out as they could have been. Right? Not to say that they're just trash or anything. They just didn't hold up. And so, um, basically, yeah, it was, the characters are the most interesting part of the thing, and or the show, and the world building still is cool, but it's in, like, they introduce new factors of the Continental and barely introduce the High Table for the most part. Like, the High Table kind of, they explicitly said that the High Table is left out of the equation until like the very end, where they explain their power play and why they have such a beef with Winston Scott. And so the High Table has very little to do with it for the most part. But they introduce new factors of the Continental, like a kill switch, like basically a kill switch where the owner of the Continental can just press a button and the whole thing implodes from the inside. Which, how they got that built in the 70s is fucking beyond me. But hey, who am I to question that? Maybe I should do some more research. But I thought that was kind of weird, and they never mentioned it in any of the other John Wick movies, which became kind of a problem. Now, I guess you could say that, so that it was triggered by DNA, right? So you had to use Mel Gibson's hand to press onto one of those, scanners, and that triggers the implosion. So unless it was just his DNA as the owner of the Continental and not Winston's, I guess you can explain why Winston didn't use it when the Continental was under attack in John Wick 3. But then again, why didn't he do it, right? Why didn't? But I guess he didn't do it because he loved the Continental too much to consecrate it. And so, yeah, it's things like that that made me. It kind of took me out of it just a little bit, right? Those are things that I didn't like about it. Is sort of these little minor inconsistencies. Is the message in it? The message. A little bit. It's not obnoxious and overstays its welcome or anything like that. It's not like Velma, right? It's not like anything from Marvel or Disney or anything like that. It's just, it's basic shit that 20 years ago would have been like, people wouldn't have had a problem with it 20 years ago, but in the time that it's come out, it feels like it's just another piece of intersectional feminism. Just another piece of Hollywood wokeness creeping into something that we like. And really, like I said, 20 years ago wouldn't have been a problem. But it's mostly like, 100-something pound chicks beating up 400-pound dudes. Like that's, but this is John Wick, where most of the shit like gravity and physics don't exactly work. But it's small things like that, that really, I guess make you question. There's also a side story of a detective that's trying to take down the Continental, which made me question why they even bothered with that. And it felt like key jangling to, like, because they hint that there's hints of John Wick's parents throughout. They try and hint about John Wick's parentage throughout the entire series, and they never confirm it, so it just feels like key jangling, especially at the very end where this detective lady, that's the thing that really pissed me off too, is that, like, the very end, spoilers here, Winston is underneath the Continental in a subway, right, on the subterranean level, and he has a chance to confront Mel Gibson, who this whole time it's been established that he wants revenge on Mel Gibson for basically kidnapping him as a kid and turning him into a mob weapon, right? Indoctrinating him basically. So they had the perfect chance to do Winston's story very interesting and get his revenge on Mel Gibson. But then this cop lady, who's just kind of randomly there, right? Her whole story is very random, and she's sleeping around with another cop who's married to try and investigate something so she can take down the Continental Hotel, because there was a tie-in between her and Winston, because when Winston was a child... Oh, this is... Okay, yeah. So when Winston was a child, he was forced by Mel Gibson to throw a Molotov cocktail, or technically he was forced by his brother to do it, but he was ordered... Both him and his brother were ordered by Mel Gibson to throw a Molotov cocktail into a apartment complex. Little did they know that in the apartment complex, people were still in the building, right? They were trying to torch it down for the mob, basically. But they ended up killing a lot of people with the fire, and so uh, basically, this police chick that we're following randomly was one of the survivors of the fire. Not well established with that, and in the final act, you know, she infiltrates the Continental, and she's kind of randomly meandering throughout the hotel until she gets to where Mel Gibson and Winston are. And like I mentioned previously, is that um, they have a perfect opportunity to get Winston, give Winston a chance to have revenge on Mel Gibson, but instead they give that to this police chick. So she forgives Winston for what he did, but doesn't forgive Mel Gibson for laying down the order, basically. So she's the one who ends up shooting and killing Mel Gibson rather than Winston, which felt anticlimactic, felt like it was intersectional feminism, and it felt kind of disappointing. I wasn't, I know I said that I was pissed, but I wasn't really pissed. I was just like, yeah, it made me confused. And then she said at the very end, be seeing you, which is something that John Wick says a lot, which makes you believe that she's going to be John Wick's mother, assuming that Winston is the father that they hinted at in John Wick 4. But again, that's key jangling shit that I didn't need, didn't want, and proves that John Wick should not be a franchise. And personally, as much as I like this show, I'm kind of hoping they don't do another season. I'm kind of hoping they're done with this. I'm kind of hoping the John Wick franchise just ends, right? Without John Wick, without Keanu Reeves, this franchise means fucking shit, right? It means nothing. Not to say that it was bad. It was just mid, right? It was just like okay. And the longer it goes, the more drawn out it gets. And like I said, no John Wick, no peace. It's no franchise here. It's barely an action movie. The 2014 movie was so successful that it spawned worthy sequels, but it really didn't need them. The 2014 John Wick movie is perfect as it is. So I don't know. Those are my 2 cents on the Continental. I'm glad I finally came around to finishing it after a year of delaying. But I do think that it's if you like the John Wick stuff, it's worthy to check out. Heed my warnings. But for me, it's just like I kind of want them to be done with John Wick. No Keanu Reeves. Now, as much as I love the world of John Wick, I do think that one thing they could do is make a video game, right? You could make a video game about John Wick, but other than that, like, what more are you gonna do here? Without John Wick, it's. So anyway, like, share, comment, subscribe. If you like what you heard, if you didn't like what you heard, that's okay too. So check me out. I'm Isaac of the Dead. I'll see y'all in the next one. Take care. I'm finally glad I got this shit done.